So what was a situation, either in the near past and the far away past, that was very difficult or was very intense doubt that was coming up? And how did you move through it? How did you keep that continuous chatter in the mind maybe away from you? Did they let go to the core, or just move despite of that feeling of doubt?
About 10 years ago, about no, really, literally 10 years ago, I was just finishing my studies. I became a psychologist, a licensed therapist. I could start working. By then, I was working in corporate. I had been working for a couple of years. I was a team lead there. I had a big team. And all of a sudden, the company started firing people. And they started firing people in my team. And I wasn't notified. I wasn't briefed in. And I felt now I'm like, cute. What? Why would they tell you anything? I mean, it's a big corporation, they don't care. But in that moment, it felt like treason, that the managers were not speaking to me and they were just taking people out of my team. And I was very protective of my team. So I went to the office and I discussed with the manager and I was like, bro, the fuck? What is going on? I how can I make my team helpful so that they don't get fired? What's the criteria that you're laying people off? Like I got resistant to it, and then a week later or so, they moved me from a team leader in charge of 22 people to the call center as an agent, and I was going to earn less, and I was going to work on the weekends and more hours. So
Wow.
it was insane what they did. This kind of manipulations was of course to get me to quit. And in that moment, it was so clear to me that this is heartless. This is a heartless organization. I cannot be a part of this anymore. So I quit. And
Was there any doubt in this quitting?
no, 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 no. It was clear as there was fear. There was a lot of fear because I didn't know what I was going to do. I literally just graduated. I was just having my first couple of clients. It was not a clear path forward. And I quit. And turns out, and immediately I started applying to other jobs. And turns out that this company was actually, if they would call for references, this other companies that were interviewing me, they would say that I just stopped showing up at work, or that I don't know what they would say. Like they would say something bad about me that was not real, that was not true. Or that was true, but it was not the full story. And then companies wouldn't call back. So I kept on going to job interviews for months upon months. And I would never be called back. I would advance to the stage of the final interview right before they check your references, and then they wouldn't call me back, even if it was a perfect fit. And in that moment, I didn't make the connection that it was probably the other company. Maybe I suspected it, but it was like, they wouldn't do that. Later on, I learned that they do that a lot of people. That they have this blacklist that they share between all the corporations and all the companies that are friends.
Yeah.
And they probably blacklisted me. Which in any other country that would be like a massive lawsuit. But it was so cute. I was 23, and then I didn't have many resources. I literally just went to university, and like the education of psychology is theoretical. You don't get any practical education on how to deal with your own stuff. And interview after interview, I would go with all my hopes up, and I would start doubting myself because I was never going through the point where I got a job. And by this time, I also just bought my house. So luckily I didn't have rent, but I had just bought my house. I had to pay the bills and I had to buy food. I was not living with my parents. And I remember having to count, you know, those coins that everybody has in the house. It's just like a bowl of coins that you just put there because nobody wants to use them or take them to the bank. I use that money to go to the farmer's market to buy as cheap as possible, to buy fruit. And I would buy a lot of fruit and some pasta and stuff. And that would be the food that I would eat. So I minimized everything that would cost money. I was just deleting everything and just cutting back. And it was a very dark part of my life because even though I've gone to very dark places afterwards, I had a lot more resources. And back then, I was a newbie to the adult life and how things don't go the way that you want them to go, and how your ideals are not necessarily met in reality, and how companies which are supposed to be good and taking care of employees, they don't necessarily. And how the system doesn't support you, because I also wanted to apply to get like a compensation from the bank, the central bank, because when you're unemployed, you can get that. And I couldn't because I had a university degree. So it was like all the doors were slamming in my face. And I didn't have the tools to navigate that. I hadn't connected to my purpose. I hadn't connected to a bigger why for my life. I was just miserable. And then doubt comes in. Maybe you're not good enough. Maybe your life is supposed to be nothing. There's no way out. Will you ever get out? Will you ever get hired? Will your life ever mean something to anyone? And then I always feel it in the depths, in the worst spaces that you can go. That's when you truly find your strength. And after many, many months of searching and not finding anything, I have run out of battery. It was depressive. Anything would make me cry, basically. And I didn't know if my life was worth living. And then at some point, it was a decision that I made that I decided there has to be a way. There has to be a way. And it was something internal that was just shifting from there's no way. As we say, there's a saying in Spanish of you're pissed by horses. So basically nobody wants you, nobody likes you, and just stay away from everybody. And I started feeling that maybe I was not pissed by horses. Maybe there was another way. And I turned to searching jobs online.
But before, what was the shift? What made you to think, oh, maybe I'm not pissed by voices? Because you were to the rock bottom. You didn't know how to get out of this. You were full of doubt. What made you shift?
Now I feel it often. It happens fast. Back then, it was probably the first time that it had happened. And I don't think I can pinpoint it. I don't think I can. I mean, it was 10 years ago. And what I think is something internal, deeper, bigger than you, bigger than your circumstances, sees a way or dreams a way that this is not your reality forever, that you have a different option. And then that somehow, it's a thought married to a feeling that creates a different momentum that shifts things. And I remember thinking of possibilities and how possibilities would make me feel. Like, what if I do this? And then some things would expand me, some things would make me feel good, better,
Mhm.
out of the rut. So then anything that would make me feel a little bit better than the absolute dip hole that it was in. That was what I was going for.
Mm.
And I started exploring what was that thing. Okay, possibilities. Online job. Maybe I can find an online job. They won't be able to check. They won't call for references. What if I find an online job? This company cannot screw me if they are not being called. And then that's when I started searching for a job online. And then found one, and then I found one in person because of a recommendation of the mother of a friend, which I didn't like. It was in an insurance company, also like a thing that I didn't want, but it shifted the momentum. And then after that, I found jobs in human resources for companies where in the US. So I basically stopped doing the same thing that hadn't been working, and by divine intervention, by a moment of clarity, I noticed that what if you find something online? Like that possibility was expanding something, was creating hope, was signaling a new path. And I just went all in. And that worked. That worked really well. I was working online way before it was cool. Like honestly, way before. I could have traveled the world when it was the first people that were doing it and working. I would have been one of the first digital nomads. And yeah, never looked back since then. I haven't worked in an office like full time since that time.
What if?
What if?
What if such a powerful
Yeah.
like peek into possibilities rather than things that are not going well?
Yeah.
What if? What if it actually could work?
Hmm. And I think also when the internal landscape, which is bad, it was bad at that time, it's also matched with a bad external landscape. You're stuck in a loop. Like, I am miserable, I am depressed, I go to a job interview, I perform poorly, I don't get hired. And then it's this space where you just cannot get out.
Mhm.
So you just have to grab onto anything that is going to shift that reality that you're living in. What is other possibility? What is a different world that you can inhabit? And then just find that within you and go there.
And when you were saying it was when you were at rock bottom, you were like, I was depressive. I didn't know how this could continue. And I'm just speaking from my own experience. Once you are in this loop of thoughts of doubt coming up, they're getting quite a momentum. It's
Yeah.
getting quite intense.
Yeah.
If you don't stop it somewhere or somebody else helps you get out of that,
Mm-hmm.
it just keeps on going.
Mm-hmm.
Because your mind is just in one path, in one direction, it just keeps on going.
Mm-hmm.
In those moments, what did you do to not, for example, kill yourself or to move back to your parents and just put everything aside or just completely stop living?
I think it's gradual. It's such a gradual process. Yes, there's an initial big shock, but then it becomes such a gradual process that you don't realize how deep into it you are
Mhm.
and how bad you feel. Because it's like hair growing. Is it all of a sudden it's long, and then you're like, what?